No rings, no wedding feast, and sometimes not even a bride. Since the start of the full-scale war, these strange weddings have become more and more common in Russia. The groom leaves for the so-called special military operation the very next day, dies a few months later, and his wife receives millions of rubles in state compensation. In Russia, such women are often called black widows. But these are not just isolated stories. This is an entire system created by the war and the massive payouts the state uses to lure men to the front. How does this market work? Where do these black widows find their victims? And why can't the very state that created this system stop it? That's what you'll learn today in an investigation by Vodtak. On this photo is Vladimir Titkov, a Russian soldier who was killed in 2025. One day before signing his military contract, he got married. A few months later, he was dead on the front line. His relatives claim that he had never even met the wife who is now seeking millions of rubles in compensation for his death.
По документам, считая его 9-го, у него стоит штамп января, что его женили, который он даже не видел, как он потом детям звонил и говорил, что жена-то хоть красивая, мы-то я откуда знаем, фотографию видел, вроде красивая. И 10-го, считай, штамп стоит в военном билете января. То есть уже отправили его.
Vladimir Titkov was born in a small village in the Orenburg region. By the age of 45, he had not managed to start a family or find permanent work. He made a living from occasional construction jobs and had 2 convictions for using violence against a government official. On holidays and weekends, Titkov would travel to Samara to visit his nieces and nephews. There he spent time at the AR Game Computer Club playing tank games and drinking with the club's owner, Armen Vorosyan. According to the dead man's sister, Tatyana Reshitova, during the New Year holidays, Armen showed her brother a photo of his sister Asmik and suggested that he marry her. Reshitova claims that Vladimir had never met the woman in person. Moreover, according to his sister, Vorosyan took away his passport so that once he sobered up, he would not change his mind about getting married. Reshitova also claims that Armen Vorosyan later confirmed to her boyfriend that Titkov had in fact married a woman he barely knew.
И Размик звонит этому Армену и говорит, ну, правда это или нет. Он сперва не хотел ничего говорить, а потом сказал, да, это правда, что Вовку женили мы на его сестре. Он говорит, в смысле вы женили? Говорит, они, говорит, друг друга даже не знают. Ну а что, говорит, добру, говорит, пропадать зазря?
Asmik Vorosyan is Armen's older sister. She lives in Samara, posts glamorous photos on social media, and runs her own business. She owns a flower shop called Pink Floyd. She prefers to go by the fairy tale name Jasmine. Titkov's sister claims that Asmik was not even present at the wedding ceremony and that the marriage was registered on the very day the application was filed. It is worth noting that Russian law does not allow a marriage to be registered without the presence of both spouses. There are no exceptions, even for participants in the war.
У нас есть статья 11 Семейного кодекса, там четко указано, что брак заключается при личном присутствии обоих лиц. Одному никак нельзя, это 100%, нет исключений. Так, чтобы один пришел, а второго нет, такого я не знаю пока. Явно что-то здесь не то.
Registration on the same day the application is filed is possible for military personnel, but only if they have documents from the Military Enlistment Office or a contract with the Ministry of Defense. However, according to Reshitova, her brother did not yet have such documents at the time of the wedding. He went to the enlistment office only the next day. Journalists were unable to obtain proof of Tatyana's claims, but the fact that the marriage between Vladimir Titkov and Asmik Vorosyan was registered on January 9, 2025, is confirmed by information from leaked databases. The day after the wedding, on January 10th, Titkov signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense. Before being sent to the front, according to his sister, he managed to tell his nieces and nephews that the bank card onto which his military payments were supposed to be transferred had disappeared. As early as April, Tatyana was informed that her brother was missing in action. According to Reshitova, she was able to obtain a bank statement and found that money was disappearing from her brother's account almost immediately after it was deposited.
Выясняется, что 17 января на этот счет поступает 4 миллиона, ну там 3600, 400, грубо говоря, 4 миллиона. В этот же день эта же жена его снимает все деньги, потом в этот же день она переводит 500 или 400 тысяч этому петуху.
The one-time payment for signing a contract in Samara at that time was exactly this amount, 3.6 million rubles, about $48,000. According to his sister, his monthly salary was also withdrawn in cash from the bank card immediately after it was deposited. The editorial team cannot documentarily confirm this part of the story. Tatiana refused to provide journalists with the bank statement. However, the name Vladimir Titkov comes up repeatedly in this story. In October 2025, Tatiana's ex-husband came across a fresh grave bearing Vladimir Titkov's name at the Rubezhnoye cemetery in Samara. Tatiana recognized the portrait on the cross. It was her brother's passport photo. As it turned out, the man had been buried by the military enlistment office, and the body was identified by his wife, Asmik Vorosyan. His sister was not even informed of his death. There is, however, another version of this story. In a conversation with investigative journalists, Vladimir Titkov, whom Tatiana accuses of stealing the money, described himself as a longtime friend of both Vladimir Titkov and Asmik. According to him, they had a real relationship, and Titkov went to war of his own accord for money and to improve his status. Titkov denies that the bride was absent from the wedding ceremony. He claims that he personally attended the wedding, although he cannot even remember the exact date and has no photographs from the event. He explained the lack of photos by saying that Asmik had allegedly hidden her relationship with a non-Armenian from her relatives. Titkov also claims that Titkov's sister became interested in the story only after her brother disappeared, and that her main goal is to obtain the posthumous compensation payments.
Все походы в военкоматы, да, в социальные там службы, да, и один единственный вопрос. Сколько денег? Почему я ничего не получила? Как я могу получить? Что мне для этого нужно сделать?
Nevertheless, Vladimir Titkov was unable to answer many of the journalists' questions. For example, he could not recall exactly where and when Asmik met Vladimir, when Titkov left for the front, or when they last spoke, even though he himself claims that he had been in constant contact with him and even allowed him to live in his apartment for free. Tatiana Reshitova hired a lawyer. She hopes to secure the exhumation of her brother's body, prove that his marriage to Asmik was fictitious, and, quote, send everyone involved to prison. Reshitova told investigators that at the end of 2025, a criminal fraud case was opened against Titkov, Armen, and Asmik. She insists that she is seeking not money, but justice. Nevertheless, if the marriage is annulled, she will remain the only person eligible to claim the multi-million ruble compensation payment for her dead brother. The story of Vladimir Titkov is one of many cases in which the relatives of dead Russian soldiers speak about so-called black widows, women who marry servicemen for the compensation payments. Marriage to a participant in the war against Ukraine is the fastest possible path to enrichment and solving financial problems. The so-called coffin money is paid to the closest relatives, the wife, parents, and children. You can see the approximate amounts on the screen. Brothers and sisters can only claim the presidential payment of 5 million rubles if there are no other legal claimants. That is why, for a certain category of women in Russia, so-called SMO participants have become the most desirable husbands. Finding a military sponsor is easier than it seems. On VKontakte, Russia's equivalent of Facebook, there are dozens of dedicated groups, while on Telegram, there are bots specifically created to connect women with men taking part in the invasion of Ukraine.
Hi, my name is Raisa. I am 28, from Surgut. I have a son. I would like to meet that very man with a capital letter. I believe that all real men are at the special military operation.
Hello, my name is Katerina. I am waiting for my dear son, who has been at the SMO since the first days of mobilization. I will be a reliable friend to a soldier who writes to me.
I'm open to chatting and meeting. Amputation doesn't scare me. Message me, even just like that. If you're in a hospital in St. Petersburg, we'll connect faster.
With each year of the war, the media reports more and more cases of Black Widow scams. After studying the available cases, journalists found that such women most often operate according to three main scenarios. Under the first scenario, the future widow finds a man who is easily influenced, quickly registers a marriage, and then persuades her husband to do his duty to the motherland. A likely victim of this scenario was 40-year-old Alexei Sergeyenko. He grew up in a small Buryat village, changed jobs frequently, had no home of his own, and drank regularly. In the spring of 2025, Alexei was delivering packages to soldiers in occupied Mariupol. There he met 55-year-old Svetlana Krivogornitsina, the head of the settlement of Ust-Barguzin. The woman cleaned and cooked in a house where volunteers helping Russian soldiers were staying. According to his sister, the purest love blossomed between her and Sergeyenko. In April, Alexei went to Buryatia to visit his beloved. On June 16th, he signed two documents, a marriage certificate and a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense. In October, the man was killed in the war.
Связал свою жизнь с Кривогорницыной Светланой Эрковной, которая является главой поселка Усть-Баргузин. При странных, очень странных обстоятельствах он подписывает контракт на СВО и в этот же день заключает брак.
Alexei's relatives are convinced that it was his wife who persuaded Sergeyenko to go to the front and that her goal was to receive the multi-million ruble compensation payments. Sergeyenko's sister and two brothers appealed to the prosecutor's office. They are demanding that the marriage be declared invalid. The family wants to rebury their brother in his home village and prevent the widow from receiving compensation for his death.
We do not believe in her sincerity and believe that she is driven only by self-interest. She finalized her previous divorce, literally, on the eve of their marriage. She registered the marriage and Alexei's contract for the SMO on the same day.
Krivogornitsina's previous husband, about whose divorce Olga Chernysheva writes, has a lot in common with Alexei. Anatoly Parfyonov is 16 years younger than his ex-wife. Like Sergeyenko, before meeting Svetlana, he had neither a family nor a stable job. The couple also decided to get married right before Parfyonov was sent off to war.
Получил я повестку, мы расписались с ней. Поехали, оформила на меня генеральную доверенность, чтобы, пользовался моими средствами, сами понимаете.
The man claims that he gave his wife his salary card and that after he was sent to the front, she blocked the phone number linked to his mobile banking. As a result, he lost direct access to his salary. According to Anatoly Parfyonov, a compensation payment of 3 million rubles for a wound was also transferred to that same card. He says he never saw that money either. After Anatoly managed to get discharged, Krivogornitsina filed for divorce unilaterally. Anatoly believes that once the payment stopped, he was no longer of any interest to her.
Я уволился, списался, наверное, я думаю, денежных средств таких, не было уже у меня, как поступление, и, наверное, не нужен стал.
Other Black Widows target men who are already fighting in Ukraine or are planning to go to the so-called special military operation. These women hunting for payouts try to register a marriage as quickly as possible, sometimes through persuasion, sometimes through threats, and sometimes through deception. They use alcohol, false promises, and even fake pregnancy certificates. One victim of such a scheme was Taras Ostakov, a resident of the village of Chamzenko in the Ulyanovsk region. In December 2024, when he was 59 years old, he signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense. He was killed in May 2025. While the family was arranging the funeral, his son unexpectedly learned that his father had managed to get married just a few months before his death. The marriage was registered in February 2025 to Anastasia Morozova, a woman who was 22 years younger than him.
My father never spoke about it. He did not know this woman. They did not live together, and she did not come to the funeral. But the very next day after the burial, she filed an application with the military enlistment office to receive compensation as his widow.
As it emerged during the court proceedings, in order to get the man to marry her, the woman showed him a fake pregnancy certificate. This marriage was likely registered without the groom being present. The marriage certificate was issued on February 7, 2025, in the Betetsky district of the Novgorod region. However, Ostakov was supposed to be at the front at that time and had not taken any leave. Some black widows do not act alone, but together with accomplices. Quite often, those accomplices are employees of military enlistment offices. For example, a military commissariat employee named Elmar drove Ilya Yelokin, a resident of the city of Kungur in the Perm region, to the marriage registration office in the morning. Immediately after the marriage was registered, he was taken to a military unit. The very same day as his wedding, the man ended up at war.
Она сказала, давай распишемся, чтобы я могла заниматься твоими документами, в случае чего там обратиться к адвокату, к юристу. Мы сейчас с тобой до ЗАГСа съездим, распишемся и все. Посадил меня в эту машину, не его. Но там еще несколько было сотрудников военной полиции, и какой-то еще пьяный человек сидел, я не знаю, но он его отвез на отборочный пункт, а со мной зашел в ЗАГС, там 5, даже, наверное, минута прошла, нам эту бумажку выдали, он меня подсадил и все, на отборочный пункт.
Yelokin claims that he never signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense and that his signature on the document was forged. His 51-year-old lover, Elena Bolotova, proposed marriage to Yelokin immediately after he was summoned to the military enlistment office and declared fit for military service.
Оказывается, перед отправкой на СВО 13 мая 2024 года моя бывшая жена, Болотова Елена, созванивалась с Ильмаром, который работает в Кунгурском военкомате. На то время работал. И у них какой-то был уговор, чтобы я 100% туда приехал.
For Bolotova, this was her fourth marriage. Her previous husband was killed in the war in November 2024. However, a few months before that, he had managed to finalize a divorce, and the woman did not receive the compensation she had expected. Yelokin believes that this new marriage was arranged precisely so that she would not be left without compensation this time. As soon as Yelokin ended up at the front, his new wife grew cold toward him, refusing even to speak with him on the phone while actively spending his money. After the man deserted, he discovered that there were no funds left in his account. According to him, during his time in service, his wife spent about 2 million rubles. Black widows are one of the few consequences of the war that are openly discussed inside Russia. Politicians, pro-government journalists, and Z-bloggers are increasingly alarmed by the growing number of sham marriages arranged in order to receive compensation payments.
This damages the reputation of state social support measures, turning the institution of the family into a tool for personal gain. There are a great many black widows. Such women are destroying the nation and the very meaning of life and the struggle for it.
Russian authorities accuse black widows of tarnishing, quote, the bright image of the SMO. However, this scheme did not appear out of nowhere. It is the result of a system in which millions of rubles are paid for dying in a war against a neighboring country. And as long as the war continues, this system will not disappear, which means there will be more stories about fake weddings, vanished money, and people dividing up death benefits for soldiers who have not even been killed yet. Friends, thank you for being here and for continuing to support me. If you like what I do and want to support the channel, you're welcome to join my Patreon, where for just $3 a month you get access to new videos 24 hours before they go public, posts, polls, and also exclusive videos. For example, one video is about the psychology of Putinism, how resentment, fear, KGB paranoia, and the cult of violence were turned into an entire state religion, one that sends Russians to die in Ukraine. I also want to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports me through Buy Me a Coffee. It's thanks to my supporters that I can keep doing this work and keep moving toward my goal, saving up for my education in Europe. If you want to support me in this, I've created a page where I explain in detail how much money I need, what it will be used for, and what you'll receive in return for your help. The link is in the description. If I manage to raise at least half of the total goal, I'll already be able to start preparing the documents for a student visa. Right now, I have 101 incredible patrons. Please, let's hit 105. Not saying goodbye. See you very soon.